Is that over there? Who's doing it? Do we know? Is there anybody here? Oh, Frank's doing it? Please? Okay. Frank's here. Frank's here. Who's Greg?
All right, let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, I don't. Cool.
That comes first.
That comes first anyway. I'd like to call the Smithfield Town Council meeting of Tuesday, April 1st, 2025 to order. There was no votes taken in the executive session. We're going to have the prayer. One moment. A little behind schedule. May this meeting be thoughtful and productive, strengthening our bonds as a team and equipped with all of us to achieve the outcome that we need. Thank you for your guidance, for peaceful discussion. Amen. Salute to the flag. Emergency evacuation and health notification.
In the event that the town council chambers has to be evacuated, there are two exits. One to my right, where you see the exit sign leads out to the side of the building. One to the very rear of the chambers. Once you go out that door, the stairwells to the right leads out to the front of the building. Do not use the elevator in event of an emergency. Ladies' room and men's room. The rear door of the council chambers go straight. Right is the men's room. Up the stairs to the left is the ladies' room.
Thank you, Chief. Presentation, Camp Shepherd Subcommittee.
You need the screen now, Chris?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Gregory Gerton. I live over on 275 Stillwater Road. I'm a member of the Smithfield Land Trust and of the Camp Shepherd Subcommittee.
Great, thank you. Bless you.
God bless.
Sure, that'd be great. All right. Well, again, good evening, everyone. And again, I'm Greg Gerton. I am here on behalf of the Master Plan Committee for Camp Shepherd. We're pretty excited to present to you guys the Camp Shepherd Comprehensive Master Plan. This plan represents a collaborative effort focused on enhancing and preserving one of the town's most valued community assets. And so tonight, I'm going to provide you with a clear overview of our recommended vision for the future of Camp Shepherd and outline some specific steps toward achieving that vision. So we're going to give, or I'm rather going to provide a concise overview of the master plan, first by introducing the property's historical context and significance to Smithfield. After that, I'll go over what we heard from the community through extensive public engagement. highlighting residents' priorities and expectations for Camp Shepherd's future, then briefly outline the contents of the master plan itself, followed by the key recommendations that emerged from both analysis and community input. I'll also review a clearly defined implementation timeline to guide the phased development of the property, along with a detailed strategy to ensure sustainable funding and long-term fiscal responsibility. Finally, we'll conclude by outlining some specific actions and approvals we'll request from the council tonight, along with some immediate next steps necessary to advance the master plan. So I'm sure many of you know this, but for edification of everyone and maybe as a refresher, Camp Shepherd is, of course, a very significant community asset with some really deep historical roots here in town. It was established in 1970 by the YMCA of Greater Providence, served as a beloved summer camp, providing outdoor recreation and education for generations of families until its closure in 2008. Recognizing its importance in preserving the property, the town of Smithfield acquired the 114-acre site in 2020, marking a new beginning for what is now Smithfield's largest park. The property contains unique historic features, including structures exhibiting the rustic cottage architectural style influenced by the WPA and CCC movements of the 1930s, rare examples in Rhode Island that contribute to our local heritage. The vision laid out for Camp Shepherd in the comprehensive master plan is grounded in preserving these natural and historic resources, enhancing opportunities for passive and inclusive recreation, and ensuring responsible and sustainable stewardship for the benefit of current and future generations. Community engagement was, of course, very important and central to the master plan's development, with feedback from over 500 Smithfield residents helping to guide the decisions made for the plan. Residents expressed overwhelming support for preserving the site's natural character and enhancing opportunities for passive, nature-based recreation. Specifically, nearly 91% of respondents prioritized improving walking and hiking trails, while 87% expressed interest in wildlife observation and enjoying the natural environment. Additionally, about 80% of residents emphasized the importance of upgrading existing facilities, including providing accessible restrooms and renovating historic structures on the property. The community also showed notable interest in waterfront amenities, such as kayaking, canoeing, fishing, reflecting a desire to reconnect residents with Camp Shepherd's scenic reservoir. Importantly, our survey revealed minimal support for new or heavily developed infrastructure, like large event facilities or extensive sports fields, guiding us toward a more conservation-focused and sustainable approach. So, just to briefly discuss how the master plan document is structured and the topics it covers. The document begins with an executive summary, providing a clear vision and strategic direction for the revitalization of Camp Shepherd. Next, the document presents a thorough analysis of existing conditions, including detailed assessments of the site's buildings, landscape, ecological features, and infrastructure like roads, utilities, and lighting. The master plan also includes comprehensive community engagement results, reflecting the priorities and preferences of Smithfield's residents. Additionally, we conducted some benchmarking and recreational trends analyses to ensure our recommendations align as best as they could with best practices and successful models from similar communities throughout New England. And finally, the implementation outlines clear recommendations, provides a phased approach to improvements, details financial considerations and funding strategies, and establishes a robust framework for ongoing monitoring and evaluation to ensure the long-term success and accountability for this project. So the Master Plan Committee operated with a clear purpose for achieving its mission. To do so, the plan was designed with the following specific goals in mind. These goals provided a strong and actionable framework for the committee, ensuring Camp Shepherd serves our community effectively and sustainably for generations. So, to fully understand the recommendations that we're proposing, it's essential to first review the existing conditions at Camp Shepherd. The property currently contains 14 structures, most dating back to its YMCA camp origins in the 70s. A detailed structural assessment from 2020 found that half of these structures are in poor condition, needing significant repairs or stabilization, while about 29% are considered in fair condition and could benefit from targeted renovations. And only about 14 are in good shape, and one building has already been demolished due to safety concerns. Additionally, the site's infrastructure, road, parking, accessibility pathways, water supply, septic systems, and electrical services are all significantly outdated or insufficient for current and anticipated public use. Addressing these infrastructure gaps is crucial to ensuring visitors' safety, accessibility, and enjoyment at Camp Shepherd. Based on these existing conditions and the extensive community input, our recommendations strategically prioritize three major areas of improvement: structural renovations. Rather than new construction, we're recommending that the town renovate existing priority buildings, particularly dining hall, rec hall, and restroom facilities, to enhance safety, preserve historical character, and provide universal accessibility. Infrastructure improvements, we're proposing substantial upgrades to make Camp Shepherd universally accessible, improve internal roadways, expand parking, modernize some of the utility services, and sustainably upgrade water and wastewater systems as well. As for recreational landscape elements, improvements to the recreational experience will include, or should include, clearly defined trails, new waterfront amenities for kayaking and fishing, and potentially an addition of some new facilities like a low-impact nature-focused playground. Beyond physical improvements, the master plan recommends introducing carefully selected recreational amenities and structure programs that align directly with community preferences. Central to our recommendations is the expansion and improvement of Camp Shepherd's trail network, which will accommodate walking, hiking, and nature observation. The community also expressed significant interest, again, in enhanced waterfront recreation. So we're proposing amenities that support things like kayaking, canoeing, fishing on the reservoir. Building on some regional best practices, we propose structured recreational programming to activate Camp Shepherd in meaningful ways. This could include things like summer camps, outdoor education and environmental stewardship programs, senior wellness activities, things that promote gentle, fitness and guided walks, after school, environmental education, collaborative partnerships with local organizations and schools. These activities will all help to foster stronger community ties and reinforce stewardship of the property itself. Successful revitalization of Camp Shepherd does require a thoughtful and phased implementation strategy, allowing strategic sequencing of projects, efficient use of funding, and responsiveness to evolving community needs. Immediate actions will establish strong foundations, including assembling a dedicated leadership committee, verifying detailed cost estimates, conducting necessary baseline studies, and securing initial funding streams. Short-term improvements focus on essential upgrades for immediate public benefit and safety, such as ADA accessibility, infrastructure improvements, initial priority building renovations, some trail improvements, and critical interventions for dam safety. In the midterm, the town should consider broadening facility renovations, launch new structured recreational programming, further enhance the recreational amenities that are there and potentially develop some new ones, and establish diverse and sustainable funding sources for maintaining long-term financial stability. My mouth is getting awfully dry. So it's crucial that we transparently discuss the nuances and unknowns here with the current financial estimates. While initial numbers offer a useful starting point, it's important to acknowledge key discrepancies and gaps that could significantly influence the overall budget. The preliminary cost estimates provided are based on visual assessments and conceptual recommendations only. Notably, the Wright-Pierce 2020 structural assessment recommended that several structures be demolished due to their severely deteriorated condition. However, after careful deliberation, the Master Plan Committee chose instead to recommend and pursue rehabbing of those buildings for their historic value and potential adaptive reuse, not to mention potential cost savings of not building new structures in their place. This divergence from the original recommendation, though, does introduce some uncertainty, potentially leading to different cost estimates once detailed structural evaluations occur. And beyond structural uncertainties, other hidden costs, such as environmental remediation, unforeseen septic or water infrastructure upgrades, and potential capacity limitations may further affect actual implementation expenses. So moving forward, the next critical actions include commissioning detailed structural engineering analyses, environmental assessments to gain clarity on those unknown costs. Additionally, developing comprehensive operational budgets can provide a more accurate picture of the long-term financial commitments needed to sustainably manage Camp Shepherd. Given the substantial financial investments required, establishing a diversified funding strategy is essential for the successful revitalization and sustainable long-term operation of Camp Shepherd. There's a number of ways and the property and the initiatives we put forth in the plan can be funded. Some of them are listed up here. Grant opportunities, there's potential for user fees and revenue generation through rentals, potential programming fees, and waterfront amenity rentals. And the town should also potentially consider seeking sponsorships, donations, and partnerships from private organizations as well. For the long-term success and effectiveness of the Camp Shepherd Master Plan, monitoring, evaluation, and adaptive management processes are critical. The plan proposes implementing clear and measurable performance indicators, including tracking visitor attendance and satisfaction, revenue generation, the ongoing condition of facilities, and indicators of ecological and environmental health. These metrics can help the town clearly understand whether the plan's objectives are being met. Transparency and ongoing communication are equally important. The plan recommends providing regular updates to the council and issuing annual comprehensive reports shared publicly, ensuring accountability to residents and stakeholders alike. So this evening, the primary action that we respectfully request from the town council is the formal adoption of the Camp Shepherd Master Plan that we've provided you. However, I want to clearly emphasize that this document is intended to serve as a dynamic and adaptable framework rather than a static plan. Should the council have concerns, recommendations, we warmly welcome and encourage amendments and refinements to ensure that the plan best meets Smithfield's long-term goals and community priorities. As a member of the Master Plan Committee, I assure you that the entire committee stands ready and enthusiastic about working collaboratively with the council to make any necessary adjustments. And additionally, as noted in the plan, some of the immediate next steps over the coming months, potentially, or at least after the plan's adoption, include establishing a dedicated leadership committee, beginning some of those critical structural and environmental assessments, pursuing potential funding opportunities, developing realistic budgets, and committing to regular communication and updates. On that, thank you for your time, and myself and the other committee members are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Greg. I have a couple of questions. On the issue of the poor condition of 7 structures, is that something that you're looking to take down, or did you want to rebuild? Or is it acceptable to rebuild?
I think as much as possible, we'd like to see those buildings preserved, but like I said, further assessment of those structures is probably warranted in order to make a final determination. I'd like to see as many of them.
Has a determination been made, the cost to do something like that?
Yeah, some costs were provided in the plan from that 2020 report, the Wright-Pierce report. However, like I said, there are a couple of discrepancies where they had recommended demolition, and we would like to see them preserved if possible. So we don't have assessments on those specific buildings.
Well, is that $1,095,000 amount, that would include all of that, correct?
Minus the structures that were slated for demo, or proposed
The
to be.
ones that you proposed to demolish, minus those, right?
Correct.
So this $1,095,000 would be the cost of all the engineering, et cetera, and rehab of all of these buildings. Is that
In
fair
theory,
to say?
yes. It is an estimate provided by
An
another
estimate.
party.
Yeah, I understand it's an estimate. We're trying to
Yep.
see what ballpark we're in right now.
So I think what we, did you want to come up, Frank?
I mean, I can answer any questions, sure. Greg answered those perfectly, so.
Didn't know if you had anything to add.
Yeah, when Wright Pierce did first of all, Frank Simonelli.
Can you state your name and where you live?
Frank Simonelli. When Wright Pierce did the initial assessment and the evaluation, and what their recommendation was, it was to demolish buildings 5, 7, and 10. And then I believe we had a member of the Historic Trust Preservation Committee come in and said, well, I think before we do that, and we kind of get too hasty, we should take a look at that. Maybe we can repair those buildings instead of demolish those buildings. Wright Pierce just kind of made a recommendation but didn't finalize it. When Kevin Cleary came out, and I believe we had somebody else come out, it'll escape me, but I'll get back to that. They felt that the structures were strong enough and intact right now where there wouldn't be a danger or create any type of liability for the town at that point in time back in 2020.
So to get back when Councilman Ionati said 1 point something million dollars to do that, and then there was another 1 point something million dollars. So basically, if we could get some grants that equal 2 points, I'll use a round figure, 2.5 million, then we can do what we need to do with that property. Is that accurate? Or do you want 5 million? What do you want?
Well, let's put it this way. I think based on the fact that we're following Wright Pierce's report, which is a 2020 report,
Right.
not a 2025 report. So based on the fact that we've seen some escalations, that's kind of like right around pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but let's say that that seems like it's pretty close.
I think maybe go back to them and see if they can give you an updated cost. And what we'll do is the town and the council will look at Lisa and Dozier trying to go out and get whatever that amount is in grant money, whether it be from DEM, the feds, or whatever. But what I'd like to have a 2024 estimate rather than a 2020, because I know it's going to be more. And I would hate to shortchange you.
Right. I mean, it was when Randy Rossi was the town manager, he was the one that suggested that report with Kevin Cleary. So that's kind of like something that's requested, by the town manager. We were never in that position where we requested it. So we can
Okay.
do that, but I think that would be more administrative at the town
Okay,
hall.
all right, that's fine.
Can any of this be done by Public Works, or does it require?
Sure. I mean, Public Works has been in there now. They've been
Right.
doing maintenance to
That's
the
what I thought.
trails and tree falling and stuff, cutting grass and making sure that the spillway for the dam has been clean. It's probably the best it's ever looked, even in my years as volunteer, as the caretaker for when the Greater Providence YMCA did it. I mean, it's in the best condition it's been through Public Works specifically. As far as upgrading the buildings and doing maintenance, we're not in that position, obviously, where we can say, hey, Public Works could do this, that, or the other. It wasn't our job as a committee.
Right, right. The figure here, the figures that you've given us, we have the acquisition cost. We have about $900,000, I think, left to pay for the property. None of these figures include any money for the renovations that'll be needed to bring the dam up into, from the hazardous or critical, from the critical designation. Is that correct?
Well, there was another, a secondary report done by Wright Pierce. It did address the dam issue in a separate letter, and they put together a sequence that was more in like a chronological, this is important, number 1 through, I think, number 7. I think there were 7 points in there. They did put some estimates together to that. Again, that's in our office. That was done for Kevin Cleary. So there's dollar amounts that are specifically kind of estimated back in 2020 for what needed to be done with the dam in their opinion.
Right, I think I read that report. I think it was another million or something like that, if I recall. But, you know, right now, we pay the acquisition costs gradually through our budget process. I think we're paying $100,000 a year. So we probably would be looking for a grant for the dam, for sure. And we would be looking for whatever grant money we could get for these infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, we can add up the math. Again, this committee, it's not our job to ask for the grant money. It wasn't our job really to really engage with the community and the abutters and anybody that wanted to come to the open house and kind of develop what the town residents would like to be seen done with the camp. So this master plan is really a plan is going to fall more now on the town council as far as what funding that you'd like to get or gather, how you'd like to spend money, in what order. You know, we never really put a precedent or a preference on where we thought money should be spent first or second. I mean, it came up casually in meetings, but this master plan obviously doesn't dictate, hey, we need X amount of dollars and we need it, you know, in this particular fashion in year, you know, 1 through 5. It's more like 0 to 6. This is what we kind of formulated based off their feedback, 6 months through 1 year, 1 year through the second year. So again, it's more theoretical than anything, and something that can be changed at any time.
I got to tell you, whoever put this program together,
Yeah.
fabulous.
So if I could interrupt for 1 second, I just want
Very
to
professionally done.
myself, Ben, Peter, my favorite guy over there. You know, we had Greg come on just recently. I don't know how many meetings you attended. It's been two. And he took the ball and ran with it. I don't think there was anybody in our committee that could have put this together this well and this fast. So I just want to go on record. We take zero credit for this, and we give him full credit for this. You know, this is kind of his profession. I think we must have thanked him 5 or 6 times. So the committee appreciates that, you know, your sentiment on that, and we do as well.
Fabulous job.
Fabulous, yeah. And I agree, that's what the mission was of the committee, and I agree, you did an excellent job. I think this is an excellent product, and it's very professionally put together. So thank you all very much.
Councilwoman Tobey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just as the council member assigned to the subcommittee, I'd just like to take a moment to recognize the members, which I see a few here tonight. We have chairs, Benjamin Dodge, Frank Simonelli, Teresa Garlisi, Peter Pear, Chad Morrison, Shauna Lewis, William Nagel Jr., Michael Romano, Gregory Gurton, Planner Michael Phillips, Director Robert Kane, Randy Rossi, our prior town manager. He played a key role on this committee. Councilwoman Angelica Bovis, who was in the seat before me, and Tom Grushka, who is not a member, but he constructed the beautiful bridges around the camp, and Director Gene Allen and the Public Works Department. I just want to congratulate the members and the town on a job well done at successfully opening the camp. These members put in time and effort in all different capacities to get the camp to a place where the public can safely enjoy its open space and trail system. The camp is a beautiful, serene piece of property and a true town gem that we are very fortunate to have right in our backyards. So thank you all for your efforts. And lastly, I'll echo my fellow council members. I extend my appreciation to Greg Gurton, who took on the laborious task of putting together this plan. You've done an incredible job of reorganizing the data into a professional, easy-to-read recommendation, all in a short amount of time. Your skills and experience as a planner have certainly shined through and have added immense value to this project. Thank you for your efforts, and I hope you and the rest of the members stay closely involved in the town. So thank you very much.
Anyone else?
You mentioned here a leadership committee. be formed, the Camp Shepherd Leadership Committee be established. Who would you envision being on that committee? I mean, would that be residents? Would it be town officials? I mean, what's your vision for that?
Yeah, we discussed this a little bit at our last meeting, and I think that would mostly fall on the purview of town staff, especially directors of the appropriate departments, Parks and Rec, Planning, Public Works, town manager, of course, and whoever else those individuals in the council think should be on this committee, whether it be residents, current members of this subcommittee right now. That's really the purview of the town, but at the very least, the directors of the appropriate departments ought to be.
Any other questions?
Just following up on that, just from a procedural standpoint, is the Camp Shepherd Subcommittee kind of going to be dissolved at this point, or that will remain as well as the Leadership Committee?
No.
So it's a standing committee.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you give the recommendation and then if it was like an ad hoc situation. Okay, so it stays.
No.
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. At our very last meeting, we talked about having one more meeting after this to actually look for the town council's recommendation on whether this committee needs to continue or it should dissolve based on the fact that it kind of did its job to come up with a master plan. We have volunteers, I'm sure, that wouldn't mind. I can't speak for all of them, but we did have conversations. If that's the desire of the town council members to keep the committee, we could do that. If it moves into something different, an oversight or leadership committee, more engaged with town officials, we could do that as well. So we're leaving that up to you all.
Yeah, to be clear, I have no desire for the committee to be dissolved. I just wasn't sure kind of procedurally where we would go from here. So maybe we can
Well, my
discuss that with maybe some type of combination with the leadership committee would make sense at this point.
Just to add to that, so the history behind it was an appointment by the town council for the purpose of exactly what you did. So technically, the work of the committee is done. If they were to be given another task for something for them to actually do, but this is what they were assigned to do, and it came out excellent, obviously. So they do serve at the town council's pleasure, whether they want to keep it or change it.
So I'll look for a motion to accept Camp Shepherd Comprehensive Master Plan. Excuse me. Okay. You're excused.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, move the minutes of the March 6, 2025 open session meeting to be approved as recorded. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item number 7, consider, discuss, to act upon the following possible appointments and reappointments. Economic Development Commission appointed to the term expiring in March 2026. I'll entertain a motion.
I recommend that the Smithfield Town Council hereby appoints Lisa Latham to serve on the Economic Development Commission, with the term expiring in March 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item B, Economic Development Commission appointment with the term expiring September 2025. I'll entertain a
Town Council
motion.
hereby appoints Brandon Riley to serve as a second alternate on the Economic Development Commission, with the term expiring September 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 8, public hearing. Item number A, conduct a public hearing to consider and discuss or act upon an amendment to Chapter 321 entitled Taxation, Article 6, exempting stabilization of taxes in qualified commercial or manufacturing property. Chris?
Good evening, council members. So we've done a lot with the ordinance since we implemented it, and we've also found some various pitfalls and good parts of it. And this most recent amendment is an attempt to remove some of the items in the ordinance which were problematic, as we saw with the Organogenesis Treaty, and keep all the other pieces that are important to have in there, such as the application process, some of the bare minimum requirements, and then just to kind of leave it as sort of as open as possible to just be a framework. And then any details that the council may need would be done through the agreement, because each stabilization that is requested is going to be different, very different in fact, and very unique. So these are the amendments that I put through. Any questions?
Any
Want me to go
questions
one by
from the
one through
council?
the amendments, or?
I do just have a question regarding the tiered system in 321-19. I know some towns do that, some towns don't do that. I just want, do you have an opinion on that particular portion of it?
I do not personally agree that that's necessary or even a good thing to put in there, as it would, there's a myriad reasons, but first of all, the tax stabilizations are not just because of the tax money that comes in. There are other reasons we would want to incentivize a business. They could, reduce blight in the area, they can create jobs, they can spur other development. They also pay tax money, but so the tiers can be implemented on a case-by-case basis by the council. If someone's coming in and they're going to spend X dollars, but they're going to bring so many jobs, that might be a better reason to bring them in because of the job creation or because of an area that needs revitalization. And the amount of money they need to spend may not really, line up with some sort of predetermined tiers. So that's my opinion on that. I've seen it done different ways, but I think that the more leeway that's given to the council through the ordinance allows an easier task when implementing new agreements. As we saw with the Organo, a lot of the language in our ordinance made it very difficult to negotiate to an agreement with that company, and that's not the purpose of it. So that's my opinion.
So Chris, if I may ask a question. So if you're negotiating a tax treaty with a client, a business, and if we don't have A, B, C, and D within this ordinance, you can actually suggest A, B, C, or D in whatever you negotiate.
Exactly.
Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So if we left this in there, your hands are tied.
Correct. The council's hands are tied. That's correct.
Yeah, well-
And mine as well through when I try to negotiate, before it gets to that point.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may, I tend to agree with you, and I'm happy you, thank you for that recommendation, because it seems a little bit restrictive
Agreed.
in the sense, I think this whole process that we've been dealing with, this most recent tax stabilization and the amendments that we've been making show that the council needs to exercise its discretion, and these types of tax stabilization agreements are case by case. And I think having this type of stringent or strict tier system rather kind of takes away that discretion from the council, does not allow any movement really on your part, on our part. I mean, the way it's written, if someone were to invest $4.9 million instead of $5 million, they wouldn't be entitled to an additional 5 years of stabilization, of stabilized taxes, strictly because they were $100,000 short. And I don't think that's helpful for the town or efficient at all. So I personally don't agree with the tiered system. The rest of the amendments I take no issue with and I think are important, but for that piece, I don't agree.
I think it's inefficient having an ordinance at all. I think with some of the logic expressed by the tax assessor, maybe we should just repeal the whole thing and then just do whatever we want. That would give us the maximum flexibility. I think we should have an ordinance. I think it should be strict because these things tend to get out of control very quickly. And I think we do need to protect the taxpayer. This is a fabulous benefit, and, I think that to get the benefit, you have to make the investment, and the benefit, the length of time, and the amount of the benefit you get should be reflective of the amount of money that you are putting into the project. So I am strongly in favor of the tiered system. Other communities have it, and I think it's a good idea.
Yes, so that the assessor and I spoke about this, and we just want to make sure everybody understood that. As you know, it could limit your ability to negotiate. But a suggestion I'm going to make in moving forward with some of these things, maybe it's time that the town council put together procedural guidelines to follow for some of these ordinances, so that typically these things are laid out, but gives you the flexibility that this is what we normally do, but because you're bringing this to the table, we have the flexibility to move you. And this is not just for this ordinance, this is for many ordinances where we don't, the guidelines may not necessarily be clear, and they actually change from council to council, because historically it might have been done one way, but if we document some of these things for guidance, but give the council flexibility to adjust them to particular circumstances, that may be something we should start looking at, so we have procedural guidelines for our ordinances, so we don't lose some of these things we talked about.
So procedural guidelines will be drawn up by who to start, and then the council would intervene?
You basically, if, you know, if there's some thoughts from the council on a certain ordinance that, you know, in general, this is what we're looking for, and this is typically how we look at it, you put that in as a guideline, and those are some of the things to follow, but if you need to adjust it a little bit, you have the flexibility to do it.
But what I'm asking is, should it be,
It should come from the writer of the ordinance and/or input from department heads and the town
Right.
council.
okay,
Maybe what
Just
we
a
should
thought.
have is a template
right.
model
Maybe,
agreement.
And who
So
would
that-
draw that up? That's
so that-
basically what I'm asking.
So that we don't have lawyers monkeying around with the language of the agreement and then coming back and having us try to change.
I'm trying to stick up for my lawyer friends here. But I do, Director, is there like maybe a sentence or something that you would put there to add to this that maybe gives you the flexibility that you're looking for, you're seeking? I don't, you know, I tend to agree with Councilman Ionati on this, but I also understand you're looking at it a particular way.
So I don't disagree that the level of investment coupled with job creation and other factors should be what's used to determine the length of time that would be given. I don't suggest for a minute that, you know, a $2 million investment gets you a 20-year agreement. I don't think anybody thinks that. What I think is, as Councilwoman Bovis stated earlier, someone comes in, they want to spend $4.9 million, they want a 7-year agreement. Now what do we do? Now, that's not material enough to really, you know, then they can't make it work unless they get 7 years. So I think that because each situation is so unique, that everything has to be looked at, not in a vacuum right now when we don't have somebody in front of us, but when the application comes in, part of the application process is to say what your investment's going to be and what you're requesting for time frame. Then the council can say, well, you know what, that level of investment's not enough to get you a 10-year or a 15-year. Or they can say, you know, that is enough. So like Manager Seltzer said, you could have procedural things like rules and regs where, you know, this is kind of our general idea, but it's not codified as an ordinance, so you're not bound to it, and it doesn't get in the way of negotiating, which is what we saw happen last time.
Yeah.
Or this current time.
Okay.
So would it be amenable to say something like the length of the the length of any tax stabilization agreement shall be determined based on the following factors, and then list some factors to give guidance such as cost of investment, benefit to the town, job creation in the ordinance? Or are you saying that should be done as a separate guideline?
So section 32121, the findings required, kind of outlines
Yeah.
generally what you're talking about, that, you know, the willingness to relocate, the willingness to expand, you know, and it kind of is just a very generalized idea. We're trying to take the prescriptive elements out so that we don't end up being bound. I mean, the 2 million is the absolute minimum that we'd even consider. So I think that should be in there. I always thought that was going to be in there, was always 2 million. But again, to make anything so specific that you can't negotiate around it is what we ran into last time. And I'd hate to see that again. And this is now the third amendment to the ordinance that we're doing. And I'm hoping the third time's a charm, and we can kind of just get everything in there that we need and not have anything in there that we don't need, and give the council the authority to take it on a case by case and determine what we would offer to an entity based on what they're going to give to us.
And that $2 million requirement is in the ordinance elsewhere, so that's still,
That's in, yes.
So that's all
in there.
set.
That's the bare minimum
Yep.
to even get an application across.
Okay.
And that's, the general idea of the ordinance is to set the application process, that absolute minimum, things like all the fees and taxes need to be paid, you've got to get a good standing from Secretary of State, these kind of really basic things that nobody would ever think of not considering.
Chris, what about if we, on A, B, C, and D, if we took out the amount and just left tax stabilization agreement, excuse me, not to exceed a 5-year, and will require, and just leave it at that? And then you would be able to, or the council will be able to insert how much money the 5-year would be, how much money the 10-year would be, how much money the 15 and the 20. You know what I'm saying?
So you want
So
to change the
If you
amounts?
if you just took out the amount, okay? The sentence would read, tax stabilization agreement not to exceed a term of 5 years will require, stop. All right? Take out the 2 million of investment, then you go to the next B, take out the 5 million of investment, take out the 10 million of investment, and then the 50 million investment. So you still have the tiers there, but we would decide what that amount would be, instead of having, huh? What's that? You see what I'm saying? I don't know. What is the solicitor?
Or alternatively, you can take the $2 million in 32121, section B, where you require a minimum $2 million investment. Increase it.
It already is 2 million.
Increase it above the 2 million.
Increase above 2 million. But I think you're still strapped over here, though.
Yeah.
You're still strapped unless you take that amount out, and then you can insert the amount that whatever we negotiate with a company. You know what I'm saying?
Right, so you want to keep these 4 different tiers, but not tie them to an investment amount?
Right. Well, then you can input the amount.
Into the ordinance?
Well, when you draft up a tax stabilization,
Yes.
okay, and you take the 2, the 5, the 10, the 20, the 50 out,
Okay.
and then you can put whatever amount that you see fit and the council sees fit in the tax stabilization. So you're not tied to the 4 A, B, C, and D, unless we just wipe A, B, C, and D out.
I would suggest to remove A, B, C, and D, and then, because it may be a 5-year, it may be a 7-year, it could be 12. It's not always going to be an even number of years.
not to exceed 20 years.
Well, why don't we try this? Why don't we just say that A, B, C, and D, the tiers, generally, this is what we expect, but that by a vote of the town council may alter these amounts for any particular agreement. Right.
That'll work.
Yeah, I think language to that effect would accomplish what you said.
All right, so why don't you make a motion on that, Mike? And
So,
we have to close the public hearing.
There might be someone else that wants to speak.
You're saying do the tiers, Mike, but just say
That's
it's not
guideline.
shall, it's a may? You can just change the word shall to may?
We would say that these are the general guidelines unless the town council votes specifically to exceed the guidelines on a particular application.
But for the specific amendment that you're looking at, you could say the length of any tax stabilization agreement may be determined by the
Right.
following guidelines,
Unless otherwise,
by the following schedule,
determined by a vote of the town council.
based on applicant's level of investment and
I think it would still be
According to the
shall.
vote
I
of the
think it should
town
say
council.
shall too.
Unless.
Otherwise, it's pointless.
Unless there is a vote by the town council to deviate for a particular agreement. That way, when an applicant comes in, they know that this is what we expect for guidelines. And if they have, a specific reason that these guidelines should be exceeded for a particular project, they can come before us, and then we would get to vote on that and decide
I think that's, as long as it's clear in whatever language that it's a guideline, right? I think that's fine.
Well, you know, whenever lawyers get together, then nothing's ever clear.
I'd hate to see somebody look at that and say, well, we're not going to spend that much money and we won't be able to get what we want, so let's not even bother applying.
Exactly.
I don't see the purpose of putting it in there and then putting another clause that says, but we don't have to actually follow it. It's just, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be.
Why don't we just take it out and then in section 32120 include amount of investment as a factor that's considered? Because the 32120 says, you know, the benefit of the town, the nature of the job creations, all these things that were.
Minimum investment.
Does it say minimum investment on that? Okay, then to me, I think, yeah, I don't think it should be in there at all. I think the whole reason we're amending this ordinance this many times is because we're so tied to these strict requirements in this ordinance. And we keep creating these ordinances in a vacuum, and then we get real-world applications, and then it doesn't work. And I think it's case by case. So if minimum investment is in 32120, that's
32121.
32121. Okay, that's why I wasn't looking at it, yeah.
Also, the minimum investment excludes any purchase price of property, of real property as well. So they'd actually so if there's an existing property and it's worth a few $1 million and they buy it, that's not enough. They have to buy it and then invest beyond what's already in existence in the town.
So it's not necessarily findings required of a minimum investment of 2 million. It's more like the amount of the investment is a factor that will be considered in determining the length of the stabilized agreement, which I don't think is really contemplated here. It's more like what you need, not what you could show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's like implied, but it's not explicit, right?
Right, like, I think there seems to be these, 32120 has these kind of factors that you're looking at, that the application will show, that the application will have, like, these kind of factors. And I think adding, amount of the investment, just in general, is a factor that we could consider to say, all right, if someone's, depending on how many millions this company is investing, is going to be a factor to determine the length of the agreement.
Makes sense. Just to make
Does
sure that
that-
it's explicitly stated that
Right, like more
term
as
of
a
the
factor.
term of the agreement is going to be based partially on the investment level.
Along with all the other
Along
things
with the
already
other.
mentioned, proposed creation of jobs, nature of the building, benefit to the town, all those other things that are already mentioned in there.
So about in 32120A1, the nature of the building, alterations and/or improvements to be made. Well, that's just part of the application, though, so it doesn't say that that's going to, I see what you're saying, it might need some clarification.
So Angelica, what you're trying to do is move the factors, move the schedule from 32119 and include it in 32120 as another factor to be considered.
Right, not the language in 32119, but yeah, a factor of cost of investment, I think should be added along with the other factors already listed.
So it'll be number 4. Right.
But it doesn't necessarily fit because that's a requirement.
Right.
So it's, or in 321, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get like too complicated with this, but I think, or in 32119, at the end, just say the factors that may be considered to determine the length of agreement will be, and then list these kind of factors that we're talking about right now, instead of having applicants guess what our intent is. You know, like make it clear to them what the intent, what the intent is for us. Because the whole point of these tiers is to determine the minimum investment, but the minimum investment isn't, or the amount of the investment isn't the only thing that we care about. We care about the benefit to the town, benefit to the taxpayers, the creation of jobs, the use of the building. Like, those are all the other things we care about as well. So I think enumerating those in the authority gives us the discretion to consider all of those things.
Well, I think the minimum investment gets you in the door, and then you consider all of the other things.
But not minimum investment, I might have misspoke, I mean just the total investment. So for someone who's investing 10 million,
Right, that gets
they
them
get in the
in.
door, or so for someone who's investing 9 million, right, they get in the door, they qualify for a tax stabilization, but there's other things that we would consider that might allow us to say, okay, yeah, we'll give you a 15-year agreement, even though you're only investing 9, because you have these other factors that are beneficial to the town.
Well, how does how does what I said earlier not allow us to do that?
Repeat what you said.
When I said earlier that these tiers listed here would be our general guidelines that we follow, and that a particular applicant can, unless a particular applicant comes before the council and the council determines that a particular application may exceed the guidelines.
So
So that would give us the flexibility right there.
But I think it's deterrent to the
afraid-
applicant.
What's that?
I think it's a deterrent to the applicant to see these factors that they wouldn't qualify for and then having to ask for
You think
variances.
applicants are going to even look at our ordinance before they apply?
I do.
I also want
I
to
know
point out
one in
that
particular that didn't, so.
there's a lot of negotiating that goes on before they get to the council. So if they think they're boxed into a 10, but they need a 12, now I'm stuck trying to negotiate with them and saying, well, we'll have to ask the council if they'll go to 12, because really right now you're stuck at 10. And so now I can't really negotiate because you guys don't see it till I'm done with like months of back and forth with these different applicants where we've hammered out these different terms. And so if I can't say, okay, we'll ask them for a 12, it's like a second vote that would be needed to get past that. So they have to get, not only agree to do the TSA, but to exceed the minimum guidelines. I mean, I think Councilwoman Bovis is on the right track. I think at the end of authority, subject to the requirements of this article, the level of investment, the amount of job creation, and tag those things that make it, revitalization of the area, like the things that we would consider. Because it says not to exceed 20 years, subject to the requirements of this article, the level of investment, the amount of job creation, and put them right there.
And then
Just a
it'll get
thought.
presented to the budget board, presented to the council, and then the council can make determinations at that point if they think the time is not long enough or too long, or the investment's not enough, or whatever, but I think, I don't know, I think the whole point of this is to put some discretion back on the town and on the town council and make this easier for applicants to build businesses in town.
Yes.
And it seems like we haven't learned from the experience that we just had with Organogenesis, and
So the
making it
solicitor has
Angelica, this is a suggestion. What if we change the last sentence before you get to the breakdown in the schedule? The length of any tax stabilization agreement shall be determined by the following schedule based on the applicant's level of investment and shall be subject to the requirements of this article unless otherwise determined by a vote of the town council.
and then keep A, B, and C, and D.
Yeah. That sounds.
My vote would be no on that. I think it's confusing and unnecessary and deterrent to the applicant.
I think it gives us.
Administratively
control.
difficult.
I think we need to have more control over this whole process.
This gives you less control because it forces you to it forces applicants and you to be put in boxes about one specific factor that we consider,
We're not
which
in a
is,
box, we can do whatever we want, still.
and it's gonna take 2 months to get a vote on that after the applicant's already been applying. It goes to the
It
budget
would be
board,
the
like,
same, no, it would be the same process,
right, it's a
process wouldn't
lengthy
change.
process.
but it wouldn't change because of this. Be the same process.
But I'm saying the applicant wouldn't know if the town council would approve what they're doing. If the town
Neither would
council
I.
would not even only approve, they never know, but the applicant would never know. if-
No applicant ever knows if we're going to approve an agreement.
Right, but at least the agreement that they submit, for the most part, is within the bounds of the ordinance. If they wouldn't even bother applying, if it says 10 years, $5 million, and they're investing 4.9, and they want 7 years, they wouldn't even, it's prohibitive automatically without a vote.
Well, it's not, we can refer to it as a guideline, it's not really prohibited.
Angelica, I think let Anthony explain what he just said again.
Trying to build flexibility
Right.
into this by not making it mandatory so it binds Chris's hands. But basically, the length of any tax stabilization agreement shall be determined by the following schedule based on the applicant's level of investment. It shall be subject to the requirements of this article unless otherwise determined by a vote of the town council. Then you get into the schedule. through the application process, they have to come in before the council anyway. You have a public hearing on the agreement. And you're gonna, these are factors that the council will take into consideration, obviously, depending on the nature of the application that's filed, job creation, all those other factors. So you're not tying.
But what about all those other factors? I mean, the level of investment's not the only reason you'd give somebody a stabilization agreement. And those not only that, but those levels of investments are totally arbitrary. But what's the basis of 50 million for a 20-year agreement? I mean, that's a lot of money. They might spend 40, and you should give them probably like a 17-year. I mean, it just makes it, you don't see the months and months of negotiating that I have to do before I get here. And if I'm not going to negotiate with somebody and say, well, let's negotiate this agreement and we'll just hope the town council agrees to violate their guidelines that they can if they want. I mean, I don't understand the purpose of having them in there. I think it makes it difficult. I think we saw that. And, I vehemently disagree that there should be any level of investment tied to any length of time in the ordinance. It should absolutely be implied, but it should not be explicitly put in there with levels that are arbitrary.
How common are lengths of agreements that are like 17 years, 13, not like, 10, 15, 20, 25?
Could depend on the lease term. Like the Organo, they have a 16-and-a-half-year lease. And so that's why that main part is 16 and a half. And at that point, if the lease terminates, they can get out. So there's many factors in the situation with anybody coming for a tax agreement. It's going to be a unique situation. This is not just somebody buying a property and throwing a couple bucks at it. I mean, these are significant investments, and they're all very different, and there's very different reasons that we would want to incentivize somebody to come here. And we may not need them to spend all that money, but if they're going to bring a business in and then they're going to stay here long term, it's going to benefit in the long term, and that short term investment isn't really going to be shouldn't be the deciding factor.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I tend to lean towards that we should have standards as well, and because they are getting a great benefit. I mean, so is the town, but they're getting a lot of cases, millions of dollars, worth of benefits. So maybe they should be making a case as to why we should change our standards.
So a tax stabilization is not specifically beneficial to the taxpayer or to the town. It's a stabilization for both parties. So you have a
Right.
situation where you've got a taxpayer coming in, that's a big chunk of the tax roll. And instead of having to worry every time we do a reval, am I going to get sued over the value? Or are we going to be able to maintain that level of taxation? That's why it's beneficial to the town. The applicant comes in, they don't want the town to all of a sudden raise their tax rate and their bill go from $1 million to $1.5 million in 1 year. So it's not really, we show the relief and all that, but the reality is that it's a stabilization agreement, which both parties can now know for a set amount of time, okay, I know this is what my payment's going to be, and the town can say, I know this is what our payment's going to be, and then we can budget off that and not be, these things can fluctuate depending on market forces. Offices, for instance, how they just tanked over the last 5 years. So if I had somebody with an office building and they didn't have a stabilization and, all of a sudden now we don't get the money that we were going to get. They come in, they build the office out, and then all of a sudden the value's gone and the tax revenue goes down as well. So it's not really a giveaway to the applicant coming in. It's a stabilization that should benefit both parties.
Are you the sole individual who begins the negotiations, or is there a solicitor with you, or a council member, or town manager?
Typically, it will go through the manager's office first, and then
Yeah.
I would be, if the manager feels it's something that should be done, then I would end up being the one doing the negotiating work and, going back and forth with them about what are they willing to pay, what are we willing to allow them to pay, and then getting the payment plan down. That's usually the bigger piece. And then the contract language, we run by the solicitor to make sure everything's in place. But, there's some standard stuff and there's some different things. So it starts with the manager, then it ends up in my plate, then we get the solicitors, and then it gets to the application process.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
And then following up on that, once the applicant works it all out with you, it goes to us strictly to send to the BFRB, correct?
Correct.
And then, right? And then BFRB will make their recommendations, and then it would come back to us. And then at that point, the council would vote as to whether or not, in a situation where this person was asking for a variance to these tiers, whether or not that council would accept the variance at that time.
Right, it would be at the very last step of the process, where you'd have that unknown until you're at that step.
Necessarily, because we would have to accept it to go to the budget board. So in accepting it, the applicant at that point would indicate that he wants to exceed the guidelines. So if we didn't want to do that, we wouldn't accept it and send it to the budget board.
So the town
it's
council would make a determination
at that
to
point.
usurp the budget board and make determinations on the application before the budget
No,
review.
we would determine whether the application was sufficient to go to the budget board. So if the applicant was saying, well, they wanted, instead, they were investing only $4 million and wanted a 10-year agreement, if we didn't think that was appropriate, we'd say, well, these are our guidelines. We don't think you've met. We don't want to exceed those guidelines with this particular application, and we wouldn't. At that point, we could send it to the budget board, but at that point, we would indicate to the budget board that we don't want to exceed the guidelines, and then they would come back with a recommendation. If we want to send it to the budget board, with exceeding the guidelines, then we could indicate that, because that's our first look at it when we receive it for the first time.
Would it help to put the specific step in the ordinance of when it would be determined by the council, otherwise determined?
You already have it in the tax stabilization audit, the procedure spelled out. So in other words, it goes to budget,
Okay,
it
I
goes to,
understand.
yeah, it goes to the budget and finance, it comes to the council, the application, council determines whether or not it meets the four corners of the ordinance, then they refer it out to the Budget and Financial Review Board
Yeah.
for an advisory recommendation, then it comes back to the council for the public hearing on the proposed tax stabilization agreement.
So Solicitor Galone, is your recommendation what was originally proposed by, I'm sorry, not originally, determining, otherwise determined by the council? Is that your recommendation for this? I mean, this whole thing is like a big headache.
Well, these were amendments. I sat down with Chris after the last public hearing, and we came through, we realized some of the issues that arose, obviously, during this whole public hearing process, and we tried to come up with solutions to those problems to grant the council and the town more flexibility when dealing with these issues. I mean, I'm comfortable with the amendments.
Even this?
Well, that's a matter of how you wanna phrase it. Are you gonna make it mandatory? Are you gonna take it out, or are you going to
Okay.
make it more of a guideline?
All right.
The wording you suggest.
The wording I suggested would make it more of a guideline and give the council the discretion to.
Send out to the council really nice.
Right, and, or you switch it to become
I
a
think-
series of, another factor.
Yeah, I think as a series of factors, I think it makes sense, but to require it and then make an exception, I don't think makes sense. But as a factor to consider, I would support that. But the language of the motion on the table right now, I don't support.
There's nothing on the table.
I thought.
No, it's his
moved.
suggestion.
Oh, okay.
It's still a public hearing.
We can't table this due to timelines, correct? Not that I want to talk about this again, because I don't.
We'll
but-
get it done tonight. Anyone else? Anyone else like to speak on this?
I think that.
Can I have your name, please, and where you live?
Ed DeMille, 75 Whipple Road. I know that Chris is coming from a place of honesty, and it's the best thing for the town. You gotta crawl before you can walk. You gotta get the people in here. You can't go, you owe this much tax. Maybe I'm off on some of what I'm saying, but from what I hear, it's a good company. Get them in the door first. They're gonna hire Smithfield people, and then through the years, you can increase your increments. But I know that Chris is negotiating, and I know for a fact that he's a good person.
Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? Where are we going?
Send that language in.
To what, Anthony? Can you repeat it?
Okay, so I guess the motion would be to approve all the amendments as proposed, but amending the language and proposed language in section 321.19 to read, the length of any tax stabilization agreement shall be determined by the following schedule based on the applicant's level of investment. It shall be subject to the requirements of this article unless otherwise determined by a vote of the Smithfield Town Council.
So moved.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nays, ayes have it.
Nay for me.
4-1. Lynn, 4-1. Item B, conduct a public hearing to consider and discuss the act upon the amendment to the tax stabilization agreement between Organogenesis Holdings, Inc. and Organogenesis, Inc. and DIV Technology Way, LLC, authorized by the Town Council March 6, 2025, making the said agreement consistent with the terms of the ordinance and tax stabilization agreement adopted on March 6, 2025. I open the public hearing.
Good evening, council members. Joe Carnavale of Savage Law Partners on behalf of Organogenesis Holdings, Inc. and Organogenesis, Inc. I believe to the delight of the council that this might be the last time we are here discussing this matter for hopefully quite some time. So what is before the council relates back to the March 6th public hearing. As the council is aware, there were two separate votes on two versions of the tax stabilization agreement for Organogenesis, Inc. What we are proposing are the amendments in the red line form in the council agenda packet this evening, which makes the first version of the TSA that was passed by the council consistent with the second version of the TSA that was adopted with the ordinance that we had put forth as well, just so that it avoids any confusion on a go-forward basis. And with that, if there are any questions of the council, I am happy to address them.
Any questions for Mr. Carnavale? Thank you so much. Anyone else? Anyone else on the public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays, ayes have it. Item C, continue the public hearing to consider and discuss the act upon the amendment of Code of Ordinances to add Chapter 283 entitled Seal of the Town, co-sponsored by Mike Iannotti and Rachel Toppy. And I open the public hearing as continued. Anyone like to speak on the ordinance?
I could speak on it first, I suppose.
You can.
I can. Basically, this ordinance would officially adopt our town seal, which I think is quite impressive and quite beautiful, and allow our residents to hopefully distinguish between fraudulent solicitations and official communications. This ordinance is an important fraud prevention measure. We're inundated with solicitations today from entities claiming to be genuine, but that actually turn out to be fraudulent. So when residents see the seal, we want them to know that it's a genuine communication from the town and not some scam. We had received communications, actually, Town Council President received communications from Stephen Brown at the ACLU. I think that the language that we have now before us will address all of those concerns. Basically, the restrictive language says, Section 283-2, the official seal of the town of Smithfield shall not be used or reproduced by any person or entity for the purpose of conveying or in a manner reasonably calculated to convey a false impression of sponsorship or approval by the town to fraudulently obtain money or other tangible benefits. The ordinance goes on to describe some examples of official town approval or sponsorship. Authorized activities by government bodies, communications by elected officials, and private parties shouldn't use the seal to falsely indicate sponsorship by the town. I actually drafted up B and put that in there to try to address some of the concerns by Councilman Winfield and Council Vice President Bovis. That's in there just as some examples. It doesn't have to be in there if they feel that the ordinance now is clear enough. And finally, we added a section that nothing would constitute a restriction on the use of the town's coat of arms, which is, of course, separate from the seal itself. Violations and penalties, which also could be discussed here. Right now, we have a penalty of a fine of $100 each day the violation continues.
Anyone like to speak from the public? I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion? I just have a comment. I think if we're going to deter people from using the seal, I think we needed to increase the penalty from 100 to 500. 100 today, and it was like $10 yesterday. I think we need to up the ante on that, and I'm not in favor of keeping section B. I think if it's fraudulent, it's fraudulent, and you must pay the town of Smithfield if you use the seal in a fraudulent manner.
Who exactly is determining what is fraudulent and not? Is it?
The court.
The court, okay. Is there an example of something that might be sort of fuzzy as far as fraudulent or not?
Somebody basically using the seal and sending out a fake tax bill to.
Well, that's not fuzzy, that's clear.
No, that's clear. That's an example of
Yeah.
what this would protect. As far as fuzzy, I think it's pretty
Pretty cut and dry.
cut and dry.
The way
I
I
like
read
it.
this, Mike, and tell me if that's correct, is it has to be reasonably calculated to be fraudulent and for the purposes of obtaining money and tangible benefits, correct?
Correct.
It can't be just fraudulent use without some type of benefit deriving from it.
That is correct, and we put that language in to satisfy the First Amendment concerns expressed by the ACLU.
Is this language in section B something that was recommended by the ACLU, or is that?
No, I put that in there because, at our first meeting on this, you had indicated that there wasn't enough specific information as to what constituted official approval or sponsorship by the town, so I put that in there as examples. But if it's the consensus of the council that we don't need that, or that it's confusing, then obviously I would agree to take that out.
I like section B. I think it's important to have that in there to be clear. I mean, there's a lot of things that are fuzzy. We want to be very clear about what is allowed and what's not. So I think it only helps the case if it should go to court or whatnot.
I know Councilman Winfield at one point had a concern about the, like a quasi-town board, like the all lit up parade and things like that. That would exclude this under section B, correct?
Definitely. And of course, it would no longer be an issue because the purpose would have to be fraud and obtaining money by fraudulently obtaining money or other tangible benefits, so.
No, I think she's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilwoman, so that would, the Christmas parade involves a governmental body, so that would be approved. An approved activity, because the town is directly involved. You know what I mean?
Repeat that?
So an official town approval or sponsorship shall include yada, yada, an authorized activity or involves in governmental body. So the town sponsors that event essentially, along with the parade committee, so that because it's an official town thing, that would be acceptable. Just like the Honor Society. That was the other concern, I think, that Councilman Winfield had, yeah.
Also a sports teams.
Town, high school, and,
High school, Little League.
well, that's a private organization, that one, but, I mean, public, the public teams that are funded by taxpayers, I mean, what was your opinion on that, Councilman?
Clearly, that wouldn't be a violation of this ordinance.
Right.
When we first started, it was, so that's why,
Right, but the ordinance has been changed now, so
yeah. That's,
to make that clear.
Any more discussion?
Can I just get a clarification, Mr. President? So just some of our Smithfield youth teams are nonprofits, they are not sponsored by the town. So, just so everybody's aware of that.
well, I think it's the fraud that comes into play.
No, as long as there's not going to be an issue with
Right.
them, obviously.
The way I'm reading this is, it's step one, impression that it's sponsored by the town. Step two, for the purposes of obtaining money.
Right.
And you're saying, and section B is saying that these entities satisfy step one, or would be excluded from that, from step one? Because the way I'm reading step one is that these are examples of things that would be considered step one, which would exclude them which would be a prohibited use, unless I'm reading this incorrectly.
No, it says B says official town approval or sponsorship shall include any authorized activity or duty that is related to or involves a government body, department, office, or quasi-judicial board.
Well, there's two parts to B, shall and shall not be used.
And these are just examples?
Yeah.
These are just examples.
Okay. To me, this is confusing for the ordinance. I think section A is really clear about, step one, purpose of conveying fraud. Step two, to obtain money or tangible benefits. And I think even me reading B is confusing. I can only imagine, and we've looked at this ordinance for a while, I can only imagine an entity reading it. I think it's confusing.
Do you have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve section A and remove section B and approve section D. So approve as amended without section B.
What about the penalty? I suggest 500.
$100 for the first day, $500 for any day thereafter,
No, 500 every day.
every day? I think like after notice, right? After notice? Or do we have to put them on notice that they're using the seal incorrectly? Or they get fined retroactively before notice?
Do we notice people that they're committing a fraud against the town?
I don't know.
Usually you don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Get charged.
Okay. So yeah, as amended, for section A and B, removal of, let me repeat my motion. I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to section A and section D, section B to be removed, and then section 283-3 to be amended from $100 to $500.
Motion on the floor, do I have a second? Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Thank you. Continue the public hearing to consider and discuss the act upon zoning ordinance amendments to Article 9, Special Districts, to add Section 9.5 entitled Davis Liquid Waste Superfund Site, Groundwater Protection Overlay District. You left.
Mr. President, this has been on for a few months now, this ordinance. This came as a result of collaboration with the EPA and basically to address the movement of the plume around the Davis landfill. And basically, it's been vetted over several years. So this isn't, as far as I'm concerned, this is in a position to be adopted.
Okay. Well, we have to open up a public
It's
hearing.
not.
Is. The public hearing's open, so anybody
Open.
can speak on it.
Anyone want to speak on it? Hearing none, and close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Item number 9, licenses. Consider, discuss, and act upon, excuse me, approving the annual renewal of 13 holiday licenses as listed as applied and subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances. The whole 13 is on the docket. I'll entertain a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving annual renewal for one bingo license applied subject to compliance with state regulations and local ordinances. Raymond C. LaPerche, 11 Lime Rock Road, and the fee will be waived. I'll entertain a motion. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon approving 3 one-day special event licenses for Seven Cedars Farm for Easter Fun Days at 20 Maury Road on the following dates: Saturday, April 12th, Sunday, April 13th, and Saturday, April 19th. All subject event licenses at Seven Cedars Farm are subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item number D, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a one-day special event license for Seven Cedars Farm, the Touch a Truck, 20 John Murray Road at the following date: Saturday, May 17th, from the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item E, consider, discuss, and act upon the annual renewal of one of the peddlers license, excuse me, is applied subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances. NEFL Inc.
So moved.
Second.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Nays?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Aye.
Number 10, old business. Consider, discuss, act upon adopting a resolution to support the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns in 2025.
Mr. President, just a few comments on this. I take issue with the tax cap exemption for new affordable, it's not even affordable, it's just new housing units in general, especially considering the feedback from my constituents over the past 2+ years. Residents are extremely concerned about the high number of dense housing developments that are being constructed and proposed around Smithfield. They want the preservation of our neighborhoods and open space. They are sick and tired of more and more high-density, multi-family housing units on every corner in town, which is being shoved down our throats due to overreaching state legislation. However, I would argue that people seem to be generally in favor of housing that complies with our own zoning, me included. How can it not be realized that more housing units means more people, which requires more town resources, including but not limited to police, fire, public works, not to mention the effects on our already full schools, traffic, neighborhoods, and open space? In my opinion, what this does is hurt towns like Smithfield because we have more underdeveloped land than the larger cities. This is essentially penalizing the non-cities. So I asked the question also, why is the answer always, we need more money? We need to make cuts where appropriate. The bottom line is, in the long run, this will likely cost the taxpayers more money. It is not conducive to the preservation of Smithfield's neighborhoods and character, which is what residents want. And I encourage the council to not support that priority, which is under property taxes, the third bullet point. And secondly, I've been reading about the proposals to change or eliminate the funding for transportation for students who attend schools out of their home districts. This is not fair because of a multitude of reasons, including that their families likely pay taxes as well to fund the public schools that they're not utilizing. Additionally, some students may have special needs and require more specialized schools that are not in Smithfield, such as the Rhode Island School for the Deaf. Are we going to punish the parents of these students who are already dealing with challenges by giving them more burdens? I don't think that's right. So I would ask that we do not support that aspect of the education priorities, which is under says fully support categorical program funding. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'd like to, hang on one second. I'd like to go down the list when appropriate to take votes on single line items. Tom, did you want to say something?
Thank you. Tom Hodgkins, 200 Vernon Pike. I'm still kind of unclear on the resolution that's proposed that says the League of Cities and Towns surveyed all 39 members to develop legislative properties. I'm unclear how that took place because the council said that it never came here. So I don't know why that's in the resolution, and I don't know how that took place. I wanted to address two policy positions that the League has taken since you last took this up at the beginning of March. With respect to Bill number H5793, which is the proposal to remove the cap on increasing taxes more than 4%, the League of Cities and Towns wrote to the House Municipal Government and Housing Committee on March 20th, 2025. Dear Chair, on behalf of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for the introduction of this important legislation, H5793, a league priority that will provide our 39 unique municipalities with an essential tool to promote housing development while maintaining fiscal responsibility. What this bill does is allows cities and towns to increase taxes on its taxpayers and shift the cost of new development onto existing taxpayers. And if you look at the article in the Valley Breeze a couple weeks ago, at least the League is candid about what they're trying to do. The League said, according to the Valley Breeze, the community needs new revenue to meet the needs of new residents. That's to shift the tax burden. Quote, at the same time, the community is responsible for providing services to these new residents, including schools, fire, rescue, plowing, etc. End quote. That's the purpose of removing this 4% cap, is to shift a tax burden for increased development onto existing taxpayers. I'd also like to draw your attention to Bill number H5801, by letter from the League, March 20th, 2025, to the House Municipal Government and Housing Committee. On behalf of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, I am writing to express our support for House Bill 5801, which seeks to amend definitions and approval procedures related to low and moderate income housing. What does that do? I'll refer you to the Speaker's press release regarding his housing priorities this year dated February 27th, 2025, specifically with respect to House Bill 5801. The Speaker's press release said this, quote, "This legislation further clarifies standards and findings required for development to remove subjectivity in the process." What does it mean to remove subjectivity in the process? It means to remove local control and to remove the input of local residents onto what happens here. And that's exactly what the bill does. The bill removes, in terms of findings required for approval of these large developments, it removes that a finding that the proposed development is consistent with local needs as identified in the local comprehensive community plan. That's deleted from the legislation. Also deleted from the legislation as a basis for denial is that there will be no significant impacts on the health and safety of current or future residents of the community in areas including but not limited to safe circulation of pedestrians and vehicular traffic, provision of emergency services, sewage disposal, availability of potable water, adequate surface runoff, and the preservation of natural, historical, or cultural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community. It also removes as a factor for denial concerns for the environment and the health and safety of current residents that have not been adequately addressed. These bills in some seek to impose additional taxes on taxpayers. They amount to unfunded mandates because they require large-scale development in towns that the local planning authorities here are now being deprived of the opportunity to consider or deny, and they're forcing towns to then pay for the additional costs that are brought on by some of these large developments. I think this legislation is so bad that the council should not even go near a resolution to support the League of Cities and Towns. I think the problem with, or one of the many problems with the resolution that's before you is it's very vague. It doesn't say what the League is actually taking a position on. And I don't think the council should support that. It's not in the interest of taxpayers. I don't think it's in the interest of Smithfield. And I think if you're going to support it, you should at least be transparent about what impact it will have on the people of Smithfield, which is, like we said, increased taxes. It's going to take away local planning discretion. You might as well tell people that come to planning meetings and zoning meetings about concerns that they have about development in their neighborhoods, that they might as well not bother showing up anymore because the considerations for health and safety aren't going to matter. That's what people should be told if you're going to support legislation like this. I don't think it's in our interest. Thank you.
Well, Tom, just to let you know that we all discussed this resolution, and it's broken out line by line, which Councilman Ionati will run through, and what we're going to support and what we're not going to support.
Is that the budget and legislative priorities?
Yeah. It's what the league sent to us to adopt. We broke that all down by individual lines on what we have in front of us today.
I don't have that.
Right.
Yeah,
I knew
it's
that.
broken down.
Thank you.
It's broken down. We're going to vote individually.
Okay.
Anyone else?
It'd be good to see that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Councilman Ionati.
As far as the housing, land use, and zoning, I don't think we should vote for any of that because, I'm very fearful about that. There is a bill, which is part of the House Speaker's legislative package, that would pretty much, under the comprehensive permit process, totally eliminate cities and towns' abilities to deny these projects. I was shocked when I read it on how extensive it was. And then I was even more shocked to read in the newspaper that the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns was supporting this package of bills. So we don't want to go near those. So I would move that we support the following: the education funding to improve budget certainty, to increase the state share of teacher pension contributions above the 40% level, to not support removal of payment of, for public, for transportation to private schools. I would say that we should support the funding for transportation infrastructure and resiliency, to allocate funds to the municipal infrastructure grant program, to secure sustainable funding for the municipal road program, property taxes, that we should get funding for state mandated tax exemptions and renewable energy land taxation, that we not support the tax cap exemption that would go over the 4% for new housing units, that we would support the workforce management, binding arbitration reform, and lifetime contracts, fairness for municipal disability pensions, to extend injured on duty reforms to municipalities, under fiscal restraint and financial successes, to support sound fiscal management and state support, maintain funding for distressed communities, and fully fund the payment in lieu of taxes program and update the statutory target.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Thank you, Councilman. Under new business, consider, discuss, act upon accepting Camp Shepherd's comprehensive master plan. We have a second. Any discussion?
Just to confirm this, we're just confirming receipt of, we're not adopting the plan, correct?
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Any discussion?
I would just like to reiterate, I think it's that the committee did a tremendous job, and they deserve our thanks and congratulations.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Consider, discuss, act upon authorizing the purchase of NASPO contract EV 0000354 of 7 automatic external defibrillators from Advantage Emergency Devices in Brewster, New York, in the amount not to exceed $17,206.30, utilizing the funds from the opioid settlement funds. Do we have a second?
Are we going to hear from
Nope. Mr. Director Manning, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening, members of the council. Good to see you all. Tonight's request is to both increase our outdoor network of automatic external defibrillators in public places and public spaces in the town of Smithfield, as well as to add Narcan into these external cabinets. These are truly 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week available AEDs that are at our ball fields and our playground areas in the community, so that in the event of an emergency at any time, this equipment is available.
Great. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The opioid settlement fund, did we get a specific amount of money for that, or is that?
We did, I refer to the chief on.
Yes, we have money on that account to use towards response like this and other programs. We have a mailer going out shortly in regards to the opioid crisis, and actually integrating our mobile integrated healthcare community paramedicine into helping some of these folks with the drug.
How much did we get on
So we
approximately?
keep getting payments. I think on right now, we have like $230,000 in that account.
And it's going to keep going for about, I think, 20 years this time?
Which one?
20 years, so we got money coming in every year
And it only can be used
for that.
for those purposes.
For those purposes?
Yes. I know, Mike, you wanted to take it and use it for somewhere else. I saw
No, that's fine.
I saw the
That's
gleam
fine.
in your eye.
No, that's fine. That's
Thank
fine.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Item C, consider, discuss, the act upon authorizing requests for proposals from general contractor Prime Subcontract Services for Right Health and Safety Culinary Emergency Project on behalf of the school department. Welcome and thank you for coming.
Good evening. I'm Patrick Robler. I'm with Collier's Project Leaders, the OPM for this project that we're talking about today. So we are before you today to get approval to publish this RFP on the 4th after it goes in front of the school committee. Y'all are just first this time. And so this is the RFP, and it's currently in complete form. We will be adding the drawings, contract, the AIA contract, those sorts of things as we get those developed. We are just on a fast track. And so this is the last meeting that we can get this approval and still maintain our timeline. But as of right now, I can tell you that SLAM Architects is working on their drawings. They already have those started. We're starting with the 1964 building drawings. We have the layouts for the culinary room, and we have been walking that and kind of getting that all planned out. But this will give us the authorization to move forward with that process, provided that we get the school committee approval. So I'm here for any questions that you might have. In the RFP, if you are looking for a timetable, that is on page 9. Our timeline is issue the request for proposal on April 4th. A mandatory pre-proposal site visit and meeting on April 9th at 3 p.m. Deadline for questions from vendors will be April 15th at 4 p.m. And then the proposal due date and bid opening will be on April 17th at 10 a.m.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Just one question, sorry. Are you still feeling like
Oh, yeah, feeling
on
great.
track? Okay.
Oh, we're feeling great.
He's feeling great.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Item D, consider discuss the act upon adopting a resolution. The manager to institute and oversee the internal financial expenditures and management review committee sponsored by myself, which was asked me to put in by the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this particular item, I had a discussion with the town council president about having an internal, really quality assurance, quality improvement committee to really review all of our internal operations and how our procedures we do, especially allow with purchasing things, areas of efficiency that we can save money. And my concern was if we did this, it'd be nice to have it institutionalized, so regardless of who the town manager is or town council is, that we've committed to this type of program and keep it going. The idea of having a member from the town council on, a town council president, a member from the Budget and Finance Review Board, so they could report back to their committees and really be part of the deciding group when we come up with things to say, yeah, that makes sense, and let's move forward with it. So I foresee a lot of this work being done in pieces with the committee not necessarily meeting as a whole group all the time, where members of the committee, especially the people obviously are working there, we can meet almost on a weekly basis, spend an hour or two reviewing things, then report back to maybe a monthly meeting of the whole group together, and everybody has a consensus of yeah, it's a good idea, let's do it. We can move forward with it. And I'll give you a very simple example. We use, and I've already had this discussion with the finance director and the purchasing agent, we use several different vendors in town between departments, between all the departments, for buying certain types of items that we use, consumables that we use on a regular basis. And I think those are things that we want to attack and have the purchasing agent go out and let's get proper pricing and buy it in bulk and distribute it, but we don't have those procedures in place. So things like that are going to improve the efficiency of operations is really the reason behind this. So like I said, I kind of refer to it as a quality assurance, quality improvement program, and really, suggestion here is that we just institutionalize it and it occurs on a regular basis.
Any questions of the chief?
Now, because there's a town council person and a budget board person on here, is this subject to open meetings?
It's a working group.
It's a working group,
It's not a
right.
town body, they're not making decisions.
They're not making, it sounds like they're
Well,
making
no,
decisions.
It's like it's an internal ad hoc committee.
Internal.
It's more like an administrative staff meeting. They're getting input, they're presenting input to a council member to bring back to the council. Obviously, at some point, that's gonna make a decision on whatever.
Well, it may or may not be. If we find an efficiency that needs to be implemented right away, we're just going to do it. It's not necessarily something the council has to approve. We're letting a liaison on there from Budget and Finance Review in the town council so they know what's going on and the things we're trying to make more efficient, so everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah, I have concerns about having someone from the town council on this as well, especially designating it as the town council president. If somebody from the town council is going to be on, the town council should decide who it is, number one. But number two, I think this looks to me like it's the town manager's job anyway, and the town manager should be reporting back to the town council. It's not the town council's job to make these determinations. We have a town manager form of government, and the town manager should be making those determinations. Secondly, I don't see how, I think that the Budget and Financial Review Board definitely should be involved. I don't think it necessarily has to be the chair. I think they should decide who they would send to work on this with this group. I think the Budget and Financial Review Board's function right now is to be going into all the departments, meeting with all the department directors and trying to determine what efficiencies can be obtained that way, and also meeting with the town manager. Finally, we have a capital committee that hasn't met in over a year. I know something is scheduled in April, but the capital committee is supposed to be, under the charter, charged with determining the long-range capital needs of the town. So I think that I don't see why we need to take a vote on this tonight to implement such a committee. I think that the town manager is free to consult with whoever he wants to make efficiency determinations that he thinks should be made, and he can bring anything he wants to the attention of the town council. I really don't see what the purpose of this. And I noticed there's only one. There's the finance director, of course, on here, but there's only one department director on here as well, the DPW.
Anything else?
I would agree with what Councilman Ioannoni said as well. I don't see, the town manager and the department heads are being paid a salary, and part of that is and let me preface this with, I appreciate the intent to find efficiencies and quality assurance and all that, but that's what they're being paid to do already. So I don't understand why this is necessary. I don't know that this is a good time to do it during budget season as well. I understand we didn't look at the performance audit yet either. I don't know if you're looking to make cuts in this committee as well. I would be concerned with the budget board chairperson or anyone that, they would be overworked, considering the time of year. I just don't see why we can't bring certain things to the budget board if they want their opinion. I just think these people should be doing this on their own as well. So it seems a little redundant to me.
Quite frankly, the reason it was brought up is upon a recommendation of the town council president. This can just be handled internally, and I can invite whoever I want and keep them up to date. So it's really the necessity to do this as a resolution isn't going to change my thought process on how internally we're going to look at our process. So
Did you have something?
I have a question. Is there a reason why only DPW director is on there and not other department heads, or?
Oh, there are department heads.
Or,
Finance director,
and-
finance director, town manager, tax assessor. Yeah.
Okay.
it doesn't exclude,
Right.
just a working group. He's got such a.
Any more discussion?
I move a resolution directing the town manager to institute and oversee an internal financial expenditure and management review committee
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Nays?
Nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. Public comment. Open up the floor to public comment. No public comments,